before we jump in to the hands-on side of things, I just want to show you a couple of examples. Now, some of these examples probably won't be applicable to you if you're in corporate, but if you're in a school, an admin in a school, you might like to share these with your teachers as well. So let's get into these examples first. So this one here is an example of how forms might be used with students. You'll notice here I'm not in Forms or a browser, I'm actually in Teams. And one of the nice things about forms is you can embed them into Teams. That's really great if you've got forms that you want certain team members to complete. You can also embed forms in things like SharePoint pages and Sways and all sorts of other places as well. But this is just some forms embedded in a team. So this one here was supposed to be a student example, but you can use that in corporate as well. It's simply a form that's been created to collect some data. This one here isn't very long. You can see it's in sections. And this is what it looks like when I'm creating it. If I preview it, this is what it looks like when the person filling it out gets that form. You can see here we've got a couple of icons. So if you are giving the form to someone to complete and their literacy isn't that great, there's a massive reader at the top which allows them to hear what's written on the form read back to them. And if you're dealing with parents or students that have English as a second language, that massive reader is really handy for them to translate it into their mother tongue as well. Again, the next one is kind of a school-based example, but it might be useful for corporate as well if you're wanting people to submit files. So this one here is an example where I've got some information here, but what I want people to do is to upload some files, and we'll find out how to do this type of question a bit later in the session. One thing to note when you're wanting files to be submitted by a form is that the form can only or has to be kept to people within the department. So normally forms is fantastic because it can be shared outside of the department. So that means you can use it to share with families if you're collecting data for families or around families or other business units outside of education. But if you include a question where you want someone to upload something, now it could be a myriad of different file types, and we'll have a look at them later. It's limited to people with an @schools email address. And that's around data and privacy and where information is stored. Okay. This is another example. Let's go to preview again. So again, this is a very school-based example, but the reason I've included this one is you can see in this question here, I've not only got words, but I've also got images. So this one here is an example. You might have an SRC vote for student representatives, and the younger students might not know the people's names, but they could pick them by images and photos. You can add photos and images to questions as well as responses. So that's something handy to know. This one as well does something called branching. So in here, let's just select someone. This has got different houses that the students might belong to. It would be great to put pictures in there to help students as well. But when the student selects their house here, then they're just given a selection of people that are relevant to them to vote for example. If I go back here, I can see that this form is actually quite long because it's got people for each of those houses, but the student only sees 3 questions when they answer it. Now, the last example here, I'm going to duck out and go into forms. So this is forms on the web. And again, this is more for teaching rather than corporate staff or admin staff, but this is an example of a quiz. So quizzes can be self-marking. And so here, this question is worth 1 point. The student can come in, they've got a visual clue. They can select the response they think it is. And again, this has got branching. I've selected the wrong answer. So my teacher or you have put the next question in if they get the wrong answer to support them in a formative way by giving them additional information. And then we can move on to get the next question, for example. So if you create a quiz, you can make it self-marking. These ones are all multiple choice, but in a quiz you can also add text and things like that, in which case you might need to come in and do some marking as well. One more example. So this one here is an example of a form that's been shared externally. I can tell that because it doesn't have any information about my name up the top here. So if you do share a form externally and you want to collect things around who has filled the form in or what the person's name is, you just need to make sure you include a field that asks them for that information. If it's an internal form and you don't make it anonymous, you get that information without having to put the question in. Now, in this form as well, I've got some asterisked questions. That means that they are mandatory. So unless I put something in these questions, I can't press the submit. So it tells me that I've got to put something in. So that's handy to know if you want people to put in or you want people to answer certain questions. Before we do go into building our own, I'm just going to show you a little bit around the data and the analytics you can collect from forms. So this here is a form around some Minecraft training we did a few years ago, and you can see here it's got 107 responses. So this again is the back end of the form where I'm putting in my questions, and that is where I can go to have a look at the data and the analytics. So if I go to view responses here, I've now got a really nice overview that tells me how many people did it, how long it took them. This one's been going for a few years, as I said, but it also gives me some graphs and some nice visual representations. So you'll get a graph if you put in a rating or if you put in a multiple choice question. And if you put in a short answer question or a long answer question, you'll get some word clouds come up that give you a quick, hey, Minecraft was the most used word in this response. So you've got that. You can also check individual responses. So you can do that from within forms as well. But you've got this option as well to download it as a Excel spreadsheet. I'll talk a little bit about Excel spreadsheets and where they live once we've created our first form together. But it's handy to know that, let's have a look at it, that you've got that data that you can then manipulate or export or go further and dive further into. Okay. So let's now get stuck into creating our own form. I always like to point people to the EdPass portal to get started. The reason why is that if you log in through the EdPass portal, you're almost guaranteed to log in with the right email address. So especially with corporate staff, you have a GovSA email address as well as an @schools. And for forms in particular, we want to be making sure we're using our @schools. Teachers or people that are on site, you might have a personal Microsoft account as well as your @schools. If you go through EdPass, you'll be sure, fingers crossed, to be logging in with your @schools email, which will mean that all the right permissions are in place. So if you can get to the EdPass portal, we want to just go to Microsoft 365 Forms. And once you've clicked that, if you can give me a thumbs up, I know that we're all ready to get started. Okay, hopefully most people are in there now. Now, yours might look slightly different. Yours might have some templates at the top there. Forms has recently changed, so this template gallery is fairly new. At the moment, there's not that many templates in there, but I imagine that Microsoft will build that out so that there's more that are applicable for schools in there as well. So we've got these buttons up the top. They're the most important. The new quiz is that self-marking one that I showed you with the clocks. New form is where we're going to head in a minute, but I just want to quickly show you this quick import. Now, if you have a lot of paper-based forms that you have previously used, if you've got them as a PDF or if you scan them as a PDF, you can try this quick import button. And what that will do is it will turn your PDF or your Word document into a form. Now, there is a caveat on that. It doesn't always do it how you expect. So you do have to make sure you go in and edit and check everything is as you would expect. But that is kind of a shortcut if you've got lots of paper-based things that you want to digitize. You might not have anything in recent forms, or you might have some and you think, gosh, I have no idea what that is about. So if you do have some stuff in here that you have no idea what it's about, if you look here, you can see that this form, for example, is in this team called Technology and Adoption. This one is in something called Form Examples. So these ones are actually they might not have been created by me, but they live in a team that I'm a member of. So that's why you might see some funny things popping up here. It just means that they live in a place that you have access to. If you scroll right down to the bottom, you see this thing called My Groups. This just means teams. So again, if you're a member of a team and that team has some forms, you'll see those forms in here and you can access the back end of those forms through this page. You might not see all your teams. There's always the show more here. But let's scroll back up to the top and let's start with new form. So again, this is recently changed, but this is what you get when you create a new form. You need to put in a title. So let's put in a title and let's put it in training forms. What would help if I spelled? You can add an image in here if you want. You can use Bing if it is not unblocked, or if it is unblocked at your school or site, or you can find something from your OneDrive, or you can upload a file from your computer as well. Let's see if I've got something in here. Right. You can give it a description. So this one here is really good, especially if you've got a really long form that you're creating and you want people to have some information when they first open the form. So this is about training and how to use forms. Okay. And then we've got this quick start with. So wherever you see this, it's going to be using AI to make up some suggestions. We just want to click on the plus because we want to have a look at all these question types and see what they're about. So let's click on the choice and let's just type in a question. Have you used forms before? Now, again, because of the question that I've written is going to give me some examples. It doesn't always, so it might not always give you those generated examples. It might generate things for you which are absolute rubbish as well. So just be wary of that. In this case, that was pretty good. So I'm going to click on add all and they're going to pop in for me. If yours has generated something that is rubbish, you can, let's bin them all. You can always change what it's got in there for option just by typing over, and you can add options in there as well. Now, when we've got a choice question, there is one other thing that is really handy, and that's the add other option. Now, if I select that, I can't type in there, but when I give this form to someone to complete, if I've got that other option, it means they can actually type in a response. So that's really handy if you're wanting to give people some options, but also give them the option to add their own response. Okay, you'll see here as well, we've got those images. So that means I can go in and insert an image if I want. So anywhere I see that, I can. If I've got these in a different order to what I want them to display, I can simply click on those 6 dots and move them around, or I can use the up and down arrow as well. Now, whenever you've got a question, you've got this bit up the top here, but you've also got some extra settings down here. So in this case, for multiple choice, if you do that, what it does is it changes these from radius, where you can only select one answer, to checkboxes where they can select several. You can, if you do that, select how many. So if you only want them to select 2, for example, I'd do at most 2, or if you, and that means they could do 1 or 2. If you want them, force them to select a certain amount, you want to select equal to. So there's some additional options you have. If you want this question to be required, so everyone that fills in this form has to answer this question, it's that toggle on here. And then we've got some more options here. So shuffle options means that whenever someone opens the form, it will be shuffled. So person A, B, and C might see this in a different order. I'm just going to turn off the multiple answers, because then I've also got this drop-down option. So there is a limit on the number of options you can put in a form. I think it's about 300. If I'm going to be putting lots of things in there, I probably don't want a whole page of questions that I can choose from. And if that's the case, I might want to choose the drop-down, which means when people look at it, there'll be just one box and they can click the arrow to select the appropriate option. And then the other one is subtitle. So if you put your question in, but you feel it needs a bit more clarification, you can do a subtitle. So it might be, please select one option. Now, in this case, that doesn't really make sense. But if it was the multiple choice, multiple answers there, then that would make sense in that case. And then the other one, so let's just turn off the drop down and put multiple answers back in, and then I would select that 2 at most 1. Oops, or equal to 1 would make more sense if it lets me. It won't, because I've told them they can select 2. Let's try that again. There we go. The only other thing in here is the add branching. We're not going to look at that yet, but that's where if a person answers one of these, it directs them to a different question. Okay, now I've got that question in. I might want to have a look at what that actually looks like for the user before I go on. And if I want to do that, I just have to go to this preview button up the top here. And then I can see what my form looks like at the moment. So I've got my picture, not a great graphic, but it will do. My title, an explanation, and then I can see it's got my name, hi edit, and then it's got that one question here. And look, I've got that there, so it's already given me that sub title, so I probably delete that subtitle. And then because I've only got one question here, I could submit it. Now, I'm not going to do that. I could, because I can always delete responses, but I'm just going to go back because I want to keep on working on my form. No worries, Kerry. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So let's add a new question. We're just going to go through all of these, and then we're going to have a look at some of the settings as well. So text, again, fairly straightforward. You'll see this enter a subtitle is still here. That's because I selected it in the previous question. So if I don't want it for this question, I can just go in here and untick it. Here I've got long answer or short answer. So that depends on how much I want my person to respond in the text box given. So do you, what are you going to use forms for? Again, required is switched on because it was switched on for here, but maybe I don't want this question to be required. And then I do have in here some restrictions. So if I want to prompt, or if I've asked the person to complete or say put their email address in or a URL or something like that, or a number, I've asked them for their date of birth or something like that, I can restrict what they can put in their answer. So for this one, I'd want it to be text. You can say what it does or what it doesn't contain, but I'm not going to do that for this one. But for example, if I do email, it won't let them submit it if it doesn't have an @ symbol in it. If I do URL, again, it won't let them submit it without doing www. And then an email. I can reduce the length. So this is how many characters, not words. So I've got a fair bit of flexibility in here under restrictions. And then again, I've got add branching. So that's text questions. Let's add a new one. Rating is fairly straightforward again, just what it says. So how comfortable are you using forms? You can change the levels up to 10. You can change the symbol, and then you can as well change the label. So here I might say newbie, and here extremely comfortable. And again, that gives you a little bit more flexibility around what the question looks like and giving people some extra information. Oh no, my session has expired. Hopefully yours haven't. Thankfully it saved it. So let's go on. That is one of the things about working in the cloud. It should automatically save it because you're working online in the cloud in our web browser. Okay, so we've done those ones. Let's look at the date. Now, the date, again, is a very specific type of question. It is a date picker. So this would be, you could use your birthday, or you could do what day would you like training, for example, and then when it comes in, it will be a date picker. So now that we've added the date, let's go to preview again. And then we can see our checkboxes, our short answer, our rating. We can check out what it looks like. And here's that date picker. So I could write in a date, or if I click here or click in the box, I've got that date picker. It should, when you click on it, come up with the current day. But it will then let you move around if you need to and go back to today as well. Okay, let's go back and let's ignore those recommended questions and add another question. We've got a couple more to do and then we're going to look at the settings. So ranking. This one's really good if you've got a whole lot of things you want people to organise. It's a drag and drop when they're answering the question. So let's put in what type of question do you prefer? Drag and drop. Next choice. And we have a look at what that looks like in a moment. For this one, there isn't many options apart from the shuffle, which you might like to choose. This one's good if you are a teacher and you're worried about students cheating, for example, and looking and picking the same one as their partner because, or the person they're sitting next to because they're in the same order. Okay. Upload file. Now this is the one I spoke about at the very beginning, and if we choose this one, we're limited to who we can share the form with. It has to be people within the department with an @schools email address. Now that can be students or it can be staff, but you can't send the form to community or people in another department, for example, if you put this question in. We're going to put it in and then we're going to delete it after. But upload a picture to put in your form. We can limit how many files we want. So maybe we want them to upload 10. We can limit the size, and you can see you've got up to 1 GB there. So this is really good, particularly for media teachers, if you're wanting students to submit files that are quite large, because you can have this, in this case, I can have 10 files that are 1 GB each, which means I can submit one form with 10 GB worth of media, whereas if I was getting my students to email that, it would have to be 5 different emails, for example. Again, I've got some extra restrictions I can add in here. So the file type, I can choose what type of file. So maybe I just want a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, a PowerPoint, a PDF, an image that can be JPEG or PNG files. I think GIF is in there as well, video, or just an audio recording as well. So again, that's quite handy if you want to limit the type of file people submit. So maybe I just want them to submit a PDF or an image. And that's my file type. Again, are there any questions or everyone's traveling okay? Just give me a thumbs up if you're traveling okay. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Felicity. Okay, looks like most people are doing all right. Kerry, I might just get you to mute unless you've got a question.
Yeah. I think you're thinking of taking a day off tomorrow.
I'm going to mute for perfect. Okay, so let's add a new question. So now we've got the Net Promoter Score. Now this one's a bit of a funny one. I'm just going to bring across what it actually looks like when people respond to this type of question. It's quite a research focused question. And what it will do is it will give you this type of data here. So it will tell you about the promoters, so people that are quite happy with it, the people that don't really care about it, and the people that hate it. Now, this particular one here, I answered 6 out of 10 in this, and it put me in as a detractor. That means that even though I put in 6, I wasn't a great fan of it, according to this Net Promoter Score. So it labelled me a detractor. So just be aware that when you put this in, it is quite a focused thing, and it's not a rating. So you might think that this is kind of like a rating. If you're after a rating, don't use the Net Promoter, use the rating selection. This one here is about, it's just more of a research type question. Okay. So let's put in a question anyway. How likely are you to use forms? And then we can't change this scale. It's always from up to 10, but you can change the wording here if you want to. And again, the only options we have is a subtitle and to add branching here. Okay, so that was the last one. So the other thing you see in the add new question is this section bit. Now, the reason why you might use sections is if you've got a really long form and you want to chunk it into bits. That will mean that the whole form isn't presented to the person in one hit, and it kind of breaks and spaces it out a bit. So this section might be on using forms, and I might have my first section, because it's changed to section 1 now. Let's go into the 3 dots and, oh, no, I can just put it in. This might be understanding forms. Good job, there's spell check. So I've got section 1, understanding forms, section 2, using forms. Now I've created all these questions, and hey, I actually want to move this one into section 2. I can just click and drag it in. So I don't have to delete it. I can just click and drag. Same with if I wanted to change the order of my questions, I can click and drag them in here as well. Okay, so that's the basics of creating a form. They all look like this though, probably. So we want to have a quick look at the settings. Before we do though, let's delete this uploader file because that will stop us seeing some of the settings. So again, if you do a question and you decide it's no good, you can delete it, or you can duplicate it and then just edit it and change some things as well if you've got a question that's quite similar. But in this case, let's delete that file upload question. Okay, so we've got style, we've got settings, preview we looked at when we went and looked at what the date picker looked like. We've got collect responses, view responses, and this present here. Let's go into style first. Then we can choose some layout. So that's the default. Maybe I want it to look a bit like a card instead. I can choose some different displays and backgrounds. Anywhere you see that play sign, it's actually a moving background, and it might just be my personal preference, but I actually find them quite distracting. So just be wary that if you do choose one of those, it might be distracting when the person goes to fill in the form. I'll choose one just so you can see. You can, if you go to customize, add or upload your own image. You can do your own colors. So if you've got particular colors that your site uses or your business unit uses, you can put them in there as well. But we went into suggested. You'll notice you can't see much change here. Is when you go to preview that you'll see those changes. You can also add background music, and again, I find that it's a bit distracting. Now, has my screen stopped sharing? No, we're all right. Perfect. So yeah, up to you. Personally, I'd keep that turned off. Right, so we've got style, settings. Now, this is where you can determine who can respond to the form. So if you are sharing this with people outside of the department, so that is families, community, other departments, you want to select this anyone can respond. Now, if you haven't deleted that upload question, you won't be able to select that. It will be grayed out, so you'll need to get out of settings and delete that question first. The second option, only people in the Department for Education respond. That means anyone with an @schools email address, so that can be staff and students. If you want to limit how many people, how many times they respond, tick that one response per person. If you want it to be anonymous, you need to untick the record name. That means it's still limited to people within the department, but when the form is submitted, it won't collect any of that data around the user's email address or their name. Okay, let's keep the record name though. And then we've got this one here, specific people in the department. Now this one here requires you to put in their email addresses as well. So great if you want to be really tough on who can respond, but a bit time consuming if you're wanting a lot of people to respond because you have to enter in their details. So let's keep it to that middle one. You've got some options here. So if you want the form to be only open within a certain time range, then we want to set the duration, or set a start date, sorry, and an end date. We can set how long people have to respond to this form. So the moment they start it, they got 30 minutes to finish it, for example. Let's take that one off. We did shuffle the responses within the individual questions, but you can also shuffle the questions. Not sure why that one's, I think that's only for quizzes, sorry. And disable question number for respondents. That gets rid of the question. Show a progress bar. That's really good if you've got a really long form. It will show people how complete they are. And by default, you can always see the submit another response button. If you don't want people to be able to see that, you can click there. And there's a default customized thank you message. Again, you might want to change that to thanks. We love feedback. We hope you use forms You can also put in an email address or a website link or things like that in that customized thank you message. This one's relatively new. You can allow people to edit the responses. So especially if it's a really long form, you might want to tick that box so people can come back. They can stop halfway through, come back, and then go back in and change what they want if they need to. Okay. And then this is, so get an email notification for each response. This email goes to the person that created the form. So even if the form is moved to a team, the person that created that form will get the email. Can be good, but if lots of people are responding, your emails might be clogged up. Allow receipt of responses after submission. That means the person that filled out the form will get an email saying, hey Joe, you filled out the form. Thanks. So that's those ones there. Now, that's the settings. If we go here to those three dots, we've got another few things that are quite useful to know about. So this collaborate or duplicate. This one here lets me work on a form with my colleagues. So I can add someone in and they'll be able to go in and see I've made a spelling mistake and edit that or add another question and whatnot. You need to put in their, oh, you don't? Sorry, I was going to say you need to put in their email address. For this though, I wouldn't do that. I'd do the specific people, and that's where you need to put in their email address. The other option is share as a template. So if I'm in a school, I've created a fantastic form about parent engagement. My colleague at another site sees it and thinks, oh, that's a fantastic form. I wish we had something like that at our site. You can share a template. That means that it doesn't touch your form or your responses at all, but your colleague can get a copy of that form and then adapt it for their context. So that's really a good one to know about as well. Now, multilingual is the efforts on you to translate, so not that great not that great an option. And that's probably all we're going to look at under those three dots. Let's have another quick look at preview now we've made those style settings. So you can see here's that background, which some people might like, but I find distracting. I've got my first section here. I've got that slider telling me how much. Now all these ones with the star, I have to do something. So let's just select them. That one I don't have to. Let's put in a date. That one I have to answer something. So that was my drag and drop. And now I should be able to select next. And I go to my second section. And I'm going to put something in. And now I've got that submit. Oh, it's not collecting responses. Let's go back because I put a start time in, and even though it was today, it's starting at 5. So let's get rid of the start time. Let's keep the end time. And now let's go back to preview. That one I have to. 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 Now I should be able to submit, and there's that message I put in there. So if you ever want to see what it looks like for the person submitting the form, you can always go in and do the preview and answer those questions yourself. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to answer your questions. I might just give people one more minute because we need at least one response in your form in order to have a look at the view responses bits. And we're going to look at collect responses before we go in there. But again, if you just give me a thumbs up once you've gone into preview and submitted your form once, and that you should see a 1 next to view responses. So hopefully most people have made or put in a response, and hopefully most people have got 1. If you don't, you'll just have to have a look at my screen for the few responses. But it's all very well that we can submit a response, but we really want people to be submitting the response. So we want to go to the collect responses button, and that's where we get some options. So we can change those settings again in here. I'm going to leave that because we've already worked that out. But here I've got some options about how I'm going to share this form and where it lives with people. I always recommend you tick that shorten URL button because it makes sense that you want to send a short URL. You can then just go ahead and copy that link, and then you can paste it in your newsletter or an email or in Teams. You can paste it wherever you need to paste it for people to access that link. These options down here give you a few more different things. So this here, if you put in people's email addresses, it's going to send the email and it will look like this. So it looks quite nice. You don't have to have that image in there. You can get rid of it and it will just send a message like that. This one here is really handy. It's a QR code. So if you are presenting at the front and you want people to do the form, you can display or download and then display the QR code. And then the last one is for embedding. So if you are embedding it in a SharePoint page or a Sway or a website, for example, you can get this iframe code in here, and then you've got that to paste into where you need to embed the form. So there are ways of sharing the form. Before we go to few responses, there's one last thing in here, which is present. This one is very nice. So again, if you're wanting to do a form at the front of the class, or if you're presenting to a room of people and you want to show it at the front, if you do present mode, people can scan that QR, but then when people start responding, you'll see the results in there show up in real time as they respond. So again, a nice feature if you're wanting people to interact with your form and you're presenting to a room of people, for example. Let's now though go into view responses. So I've got my response overview. Just go to here, the 3 dots here. So if I wanted to just hand this to someone, I could print the summary as a PDF and just email that to someone. They don't have to be in the department. Just a quick way to give this overview to people that need to see the overview, not the detailed responses, just the overview. I can also share a summary link. Now what that does, and that has to be people with an @schools email address, is it doesn't give them any access to the back end of the form. They can't change the questions, so they're not collaborating. They can't see all the individual responses, but they can see the overview as well. So again, really handy if you want to share your data, but at a high level with people. And then this one here, delete all responses. So if you've been mucking around and testing your form out with people before you want to actually give it out, you can click on delete. Don't do it yet. Delete all responses, and that will wipe the form to 0. But you can also, if you're going to check individual responses, in here, if you tested your form, you find that it's you that's done it. If more than one person has done it, you can go back and forth here. You can just go in, and don't do this yet either, but you can go in and delete an individual response as well. So again, really handy if you've just gone in and tested your form. Other people have done it as well, but you want to just delete that one that doesn't, that skews the data because it was you testing. The other thing here, we've got open results in Excel, but you can also download a copy. So opening in Excel is going to open in the web version of Excel. If you have M365, Microsoft 365 installed on your device, so not Office, but M365, you should be able to open it up on your desktop with that other option. But this one here will open it up on the web. So that just brings me to mention briefly, and we've run out of time, where all this data is stored. So your data and these Excel spreadsheets live in your OneDrive, unless your form is moved to a team, in which case it will live in the team SharePoint site. Okay, it's a bit hidden, but it lives there. We've run out of time. I'm just going to quickly, so I won't go through how to move form. We haven't, let's go back to forms. We haven't even looked at quizzes, but most people on here were admins. So I'll follow up with a few more resources on quizzes. But I did want to just point you or mention that there's a whole heap of things you can do with forms when you connect them with other Microsoft applications. This here is a form that's been connected with Power Automate, for example. So this particular flow, when a form's submitted, it actually goes and creates a whole lot of stuff, including creating a file and emailing something to someone as well. So there's a whole lot of other opportunities that we have not touched at all today, which helps you to expand the use of forms and make it fit into how you want or how you can make your work more efficient. On that, going further, in the Microsoft Learn website, there are a whole lot of training courses you can do. Sorry, Catherine. Yep, perfect. Head off to your parent-teacher interview. But on Microsoft Learn, there's a whole lot of courses you can do. If you go to Browse All Training and put in forms, there should be a whole lot of different courses that you can do. If you go to the Educator Centre, and overview and browse all educator training as well, there'd be ones that are specific to schools, hopefully, and it's giving me the same results. But there's normally things in here. We have our YouTube channel, so check that out because we often have short tutorials. So there's one on here about, let's go into forms, about moving your form to a team. Let's see. Here we go. So there's a whole lot of short, relatively short tutorials in here on forms as well that you can access. And the last place I want to quickly show to you is, if you haven't already, on Plink we have a digital skills dashboard. It's a bit hidden, it's under Explore and then digital skills. But from here you can find courses that we're doing, like the one you had today, but there's also resources on here that might be helpful for you in your journey as well. Last place, if you haven't already joined it, is the M365 Apps Support and Collaboration team. If you have questions on forms in here, you can go into the forms channel and you can ask a question, and someone in the department or myself will give you an answer, and hopefully we can sort out what the issue was or provide the right information. So I just copy that in as well if you're not a member. Hopefully today's session was useful. Sorry we went over a bit at the end, but hopefully you found it useful. I will stay on the line for a little bit if people have some questions, but other than that, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and good luck for the last couple of weeks of term.